Welcome back to Channel Water. Today we're going to talk about meditation, and it's a different kind of meditation. You might not even call it that, but I'll try to explain first why do we need it, what the benefits are, and how to do it. And then in the next video we'll have an actual guided meditation where you will practice it and do it for yourself. The goal of this specific practice is to help you overcome your thoughts, to be able to quiet them and just be still, peaceful, centered. A lot of people don't see that their thoughts are actually not their own. When we're born perfect, and then we observe everything from our environment. We're like a sponge. We are designed to mimic, learn. So just like you learn language and you don't remember learning language, and it's amazing how much we take in and become our environment. So the people that are around us when we're born, they have a certain thought pattern, they have a certain experience, and sometimes they have certain trauma or even generational trauma. So that thought pattern might have been there for thousands of years, for generations on generations. And now you're born into it, and you experience it since you're born, and even in the womb. So that becomes your pattern of thought, your own, or at least you think it's your own. And a lot of times we battle with that because we're born not to the same trauma, not to the same experience, not to the same world that actually created that thought pattern. And when I say thought pattern, I mean you might be doing something in the day and there's that voice in your head that is always doubting you, torturing you, telling you that something you did was wrong or you should do something else, pointing you to different places and basically occupying your mind, keeping you from being present in the present moment and dealing with things as they are. And it's a problem, especially if that thought pattern is toxic in its nature, if it's something that's very judgmental, hateful, doubting. We don't even notice, we don't even realize that by mimicking the ways of the environment we're born into, we're actually doing something that might be hateful, might be wrong. Most people think that when they judge somebody else, they're better than them, because that's how they saw it when they grew up. You know, the people around you constantly judged everything else, trying to make themselves look and feel better. But in reality, they're just going around the world, not acknowledging that that person that they're judging would just be them if they were in their shoes. Or they're just showing them, reflecting back a certain fear they have about themselves, if they would be that, if they become that, because they have a certain judgment. So, and that goes back from generation to generation. And we don't blame anyone for that, and we don't go back and point into somebody that did something wrong because they didn't have guidance, they didn't have somebody to help them see that and do something about it. The main problem is when we're born into a toxic environment that has a toxic thought pattern that is full of judgment, hate, it doesn't have any compassion, it's very frustrating and angry with us. And as children, when your parents are angry with you or frustrated with you, that's what creates anxiety and creates all of the basically different symptoms we have today in society. And kids are checking out, you know, if you're so anxious and so stressed out because of that anger and judgment. Kids just check out, they're not able to do their homework, they're not able to sit still in class. Those voices are still in their head. The feeling of the anxiety is just unbearable, and you can't get away from it. You can't get away from those voices that are now permanently in your head. And what we're trying to do is basically manage those voices, find a way to separate from them because they're not ours, they're the voices of the environment. And we turn into that environment, we become that environment if we don't shut it off, because soon enough those voices are now our voice. As we walk around the world, we'll start actually voicing out those thoughts. So we truly become what we resent, what we hate. We become the thing that is the most upsetting to us, because we end up being attracted to it, and We're so used to it. That's our pattern. So let's look deeper into that and see what can we do to let those thoughts quiet down and get back to ourselves. The main issue is that we think those thoughts are us. We think that they belong to us, and we end up identifying with them. That's the way we end up identifying with our parents, our environment, whoever raised you or whoever hurt you. That's how you end up identifying with that. But we want to see that those thoughts are not ours. And that's what we'll work on today, is how to do that, how to separate from those thoughts and basically allow for our own voice to rise up and to the surface and really connect to our true self. In the bigger picture, it's important to see that we are inside of something. We're inside of the body of consciousness. That's why it's helpful to understand that water, even if as a symbol, is the body of consciousness, and you're inside of that. The atmosphere, the clouds, the ocean, all of those things are basically free-flowing consciousness. So you're not separated from it, you're inside of it. And our brain is like a radio, it's like a receiver. And it can basically receive a lot of different movements within that body of consciousness, a lot of different thoughts, ideas. Some are yours, some are not yours. But how do you separate? So once you understand that you're inside of something, that there is a bigger body of consciousness, that you are a receiver inside of that, then you start to see the possibility. How is that even possible? That there will be something in my head that's not mine. Because at the beginning it feels a bit abstract and out there. But once you realize that there is a bigger body of consciousness, you're just a pixel in that screen, and maybe there's a bigger movie or something else happening in that screen, and you get caught up in it, then you can see how it's actually not mine. I just, by mistake, tuned into something, or not by mistake, somebody put that into me. Somebody was broadcasting their thought pattern into my hardware, into my system, and now I'm adopting that, identifying with that, and carrying it on. So we don't want to carry it on, we want to see it, identify it, and then stop it. And you can notice that those thoughts that pass through, they're really like entertainment. It is like tuning to a TV, cable, internet. Sometimes there'll be something that will be entertaining and fun. Sometimes it'll be sad and upsetting. And we daydream into them. We let them carry us away. And we participate with them, with those thoughts. And we move up and down with them, not knowing that the only goal for them to take us up is really to just bring us down even lower. So in that game, in that space of daydreaming into the thoughts, which could be also addictive. A lot of people are addicted to having those thoughts and flying in them. And whether you feel sorry for yourself or you feel great about yourself, it's that insecurity or narcissism, and sometimes both. You can meet a lot of people that are both narcissist and insecure at the same time. It's because they believe those thoughts, they play with them, they believe them and go up and down in that space. And one day a person can be super narcissist, the next day insecure. It's just because they bought into that illusion and let that thought and those things rule their life and dictate how they feel and how they behave. But if you actually believe those thoughts and get carried away, the burden ends up being too heavy, because at the end you're carrying with you so much that is not yours. You're carrying with you so much negativity, because that's usually what you mostly get, that is not yours. And of course, some people are born into a healthy environment and they don't have that. They don't have that thought pattern. So here we're trying to talk specifically to people that have that issue, that have that toxic thought pattern that just comes in to really make you feel bad all the time. And that's a key to how to start recognizing those thoughts, is why would you make yourself feel bad? What is that about? Why would you be so mean to yourself? Because that's really the biggest question here. It's like, why would you spend time on your own, by yourself, making yourself feel bad, being so mean to yourself, judging yourself, while you could do the opposite? An even bigger problem than just being mean to yourself is when those thoughts are keeping you from being present to the moment and acting in a healthy and rational way when something happens. So let's use an example. Your body is a vehicle, and think about operating a vehicle. Let's say you're driving a car, and your thoughts are constantly bugging you about things that happened in the past. You should have said this, somebody did something to you, somebody hurt you, anything that just keeps you in the past. So you're driving this vehicle, but you're constantly looking back. You're constantly only looking back, whether it's like the back mirror or your head is turned back. And life is happening right in front of you. But you're so busy looking back that you're not seeing at the moment what is happening, what is needed from you, what would be the right thing to do. And the only time that you'll realize that something happened is as it's already passing you by, and now it's part of the past. And then you're only looking back, so you're like, oh, that person was here, that event happened. You only see it when it's too late to react to it properly, too late to do the right thing. And now you're stuck even further, looking at the past and seeing all those things that you regret not doing, that you feel guilty for. So being in the past prevents you, that present moment, prevents you from doing the right thing and only makes it worse. And then an accident can happen. And the same thing, you didn't even have a chance to do the right thing, to react to it, to prevent it. So now we start to feel like a victim, that accidents just happen to us. Life is accidental. We're not in control. Everything around us crumbles and falls, and it's not our fault, and we're the victim, while we were too busy looking back than to see what's in front of us. The other option, you could be worrying, constantly worry about the future. And same thing, you're looking too far ahead. So just exactly the same thing, mirror thing, but you're looking forward and things are happening in the present, you don't see them because you worry too much about the future. So whether you're stuck in the past, worry about the future, either way, those thoughts are preventing you from being present to the moment and doing the right thing right now, seeing the thing that is in front of you as it is, rather than what your head is telling you it is. And we all have a destination in life. We have something we're here to do, and we know it. And when we're stuck in the past or future, we're not getting to our destination. And when you're not getting to your destination, you feel anxious and you feel depressed. You know there's something for you to do. You know there's a reason you're here. You have a purpose, but you can't find it. You can't do it. You're not in the right way. So that creates a lot of problems and a lot of friction. And we feel like we don't have our freedom of movement in life. And like I said, we feel like we're the victim. Life is hard. It's scary. Anxious, depression, all those things come out of that. So we want to clear the way so we can drive to our destination and get there healthy and able to do what we need to do and not broken, depressed, anxious, and then we won't even do what we need to do. Even if somebody helped you and got you there, you won't be able to do it. So leave the past in the past. Don't worry about the future. Both of them don't exist. That's a physical reality. The past is done, is over, you can't do anything about it. The future is not here yet. Anything you will expect will only create a disappointment. So those two things don't exist. The only thing that exists is what's in front of you at that moment. And now we're going to move into like, can we quiet our thoughts so we can see what's in front of us clearly and react to it in a healthy way, in a clear way, rather than letting those voices take over and ruin the moment for us. There's another aspect to what happens to us when we are so engulfed in thoughts that are not there to help us, that are against us in a way. We try to find ways to escape and go unconscious. So it's very painful to just be aware and be conscious, because all we get is judgmental, doubtful thoughts, hateful thoughts. It's just painful to just be. And it was painful as a kid when your parents treated you that way, and it's painful now when you carry it on in you towards yourself. So there's really only one addiction in life, and the addiction is escaping ourselves, going unconscious, running away from our own body and mind and soul, while the only thing we're trying to do is actually quiet those thoughts. Have a little break, have a moment where just being away from that gives you a high. You feel high, you feel happy, you feel good. When the reality is that's how you feel all the time, normally, if you don't have those thoughts. But we don't know what it feels like. We don't even know what it is. So a lot of kids, they get an opportunity to go unconscious by using anything from substances, eating food, going to the gym, going to a concert, going to the theater or movie. That is why we make art. As an artist, I know that when we do a show, we're giving people a moment away from themselves, a moment where they can just see something else, take them away, quiet their mind, and enjoy a moment, a half an hour, anything just feels so good that then we get addicted to it and we just want to keep going back there. And when we go back, we want more. And whatever that thing that gave us that now is going to control us, because that's our only way to have some peace of mind. And we give the power now to something else rather than, again, to give it to ourselves. So now there's something else controlling you. Instead of those thoughts, it's a substance, it's a certain action, it's a certain addiction. A lot of times we try to solve the addiction by treating the actual substance or action. We think, oh, if I eat too much, I need a different diet. If I'm using this substance, I need that rehab. We think that we can physically stop it, when the problem is actually more spiritual. It's in our mind, it's in our head. It's something that we have to do. And for most of us, it's the same thing that we're dealing with, but the outcome is just different. Because if you grew up in a house that alcohol was abused, you will abuse alcohol. If it was food, it'll be food. Cigarettes, sex, whatever it is, you will abuse the same thing, because that's what you inherit, and that's what you judged. So now that's what you will become. As you resent it, you become it. So we become attracted to that same thing we actually judged and hate ourselves. So the way out is really finding a way to not want to escape yourself, to not want to go unconscious, to feel comfortable in your own skin, to feel comfortable with your own mind, to feel comfortable being conscious, being aware, being present in that moment. And what could be better if you want to go through life than being conscious, aware in the present? Most meditations and practices fall within the same category of something that distracts you from your mind, something that gives you that momentary relief. So it might be through movement, chanting, breathing. There's so many ways to distract you from your mind. But you see how much effort you need to do. Like, you need to really physically do something so it occupies you and your mind doesn't have the space to interject, right? Because that's, for example, when we eat, that's why we go unconscious. As you chew and swallow, at that moment you go unconscious. That's why we need to eat so much, because you stop eating, you go back to the present, smoking, drinking. So meditation a lot of times just falls within that category. And you see a lot of time people that when they meditate, they're fine. But once you're outside of that space, you go back to where you started. So with the practice we're going to talk about now, what we're trying to do is create a long-term effect, something that will last longer, something that will actually resolve the issue that we're talking about, rather than give you a momentary relief. The good news about this practice is that you actually need to do less. When you talk to people, a lot of them are working hard on themselves or on things, and here it's not hard work. The key is to do less. And I'm going to show you how and what we need to do, but realize that we are overdoing it. Even when you do the regular meditation and you try to not think or quiet your mind, you find yourself in this battle and frustration of like trying not to think, but thoughts come in and you fight them and they fight you back, and before you know it, that's the new thought, and you're just in this endless cycle. So let's look at how we can take a step back and do less and get a lot more with that. And like I said, we'll have a different video where we actually do the guided meditation itself. First, I want you to understand why you're doing this and how it works. So what we'll use is our mind's eye, right? So in our mind, there's a space, and you're in that space, and thoughts are flowing through that space. We want to be able to observe, to see, to look. So thoughts are words in your head. And what we want to do is use our mind's eye and look at those thoughts. See them. See them as something that is actually separate from you. Because that's the reality. You're actually in that space, looking and seeing the thoughts come in. And they arrive, they interact, they go. And it's up to you of how much interaction will be, what will happen. So by turning something verbal in your head into something visual, that'll be the first key, the first step to create the observer and the object that you look at. In this case, thoughts. And by that, you'll be able to identify and see that you are not your thoughts, that there's a space between the two. And creating that space is the first step. And the bigger the space will become between you and them, the further away they will go. And at some point, they'll stop showing up altogether. So what I ask from you is to be an observer, to be the observer. When you look at the word observe in the dictionary, there's words that come up with it. And I just want to read them to you because it helps sharpen the action. It helps really understand what it is that you're doing. So observe, notice, see, note, perceive, spot, remark, detect, discover, distinguish, make out, behold, discern. And that's probably the most important word here, to be able to discern. Discernment is when we identify the true nature of things, such as discovering whether a thing is good, evil, or even transcend the limitation and the notion of the two. So it's being in a space with no judgment, looking at your thoughts with no judgment. And as you see that, as you detect them, discover them, distinguish, all those words just gives you the tools to see that you look at something that is not you, at the same time you're not judging it. And it gives you a space to basically not feel anything about them. Because that's the problem, all the feelings that we get once those thoughts come in. We want to watch our thoughts without judgment. Because when we judge them and we identify with our thoughts, we're judging ourselves. And that's where the problem starts. And that's where we get so anxious and problematic. That's where we get the frustration and anger from. And we want to be able to not take it personally. You're not the source of those thoughts. Some of them are very awful thoughts. And when you identify with them, you start feeling, I'm the problem. I'm the source of those thoughts. What's wrong with me? What twisted mind do I have? When you don't. That's the trick that those thoughts are having on you, is by convincing you that it's you. By creating that illusion and that connection that doesn't exist. And we let them do it, and we identify with them, and sure enough, we embody that, and we become that. But that is not you, or your identity. And you can see clearly, once you take a few steps into this, you will also see where those thoughts actually originated from. There is difficulty at first to do this and to be able to ignore those thoughts, because at the beginning you think that everything is a thought, even me thinking about this or about that or doing, and like I said, the key is not doing. So if there's words in your head, that's a thought. If it's in the language you speak in this case, let's say English in your head, that's a thought. Sometimes there's a gut feeling, that's you. It comes in as an understanding, as a knowing. You see an event unfold and you realize something. But if it's just words in your head, in language, that's a thought. If that thought is making you feel bad or really good, you know it's up to something. So as we try to identify them and basically separate from them, there'll be more thoughts coming in that will try to trick you even further. And as you try not to think, there'll be a thought about, oh my God, I'm thinking again, or it will just send you left and right, up and down, and turn you around, and before you know it, you're in another thought. And that thought is just about not thinking. And now you feel bad and guilty that you can't not think. So it's a funny situation at the beginning. And that's why it's important to turn off the verbal side of it and turn into the mind's eye, into a visual element. I think the main meditation is going to be a cloud meditation where the thoughts come into your head and you just watch them like clouds. You just watch them like clouds and you let them come in and pass by. And your job is not to interact, not to participate, not to let that pull you in, and not to have a word said or thought in reaction to it. It's like this very gentle cloud, and all you want to do is not interfere with the form, the shape of the cloud. You want it to come in and pass by, like looking up to the sky. And the less you interact with the cloud, the better it is. You just watch it. As it come in and as it goes away. It doesn't matter what it is, how good, bad, for you, against you. You just watch it. That's the first step to create that space. So I really want to emphasize this part. Doing less, not participating, not interacting. Just letting them go by. If there's something you're trying to do, you want to stop drinking, smoking, the more you're going to think about it, the worse it's going to be. While you're thinking about, oh, I don't want to smoke again, I really don't want to smoke again, you will roll that joint or whatever it is and you will smoke it while you're thinking about, I don't want to smoke it again. And then you will feel bad that you did that. And your thought will make you feel guiltier, will make you smoke it again and again and again. But if you don't think, you don't let that thought control you, upset you, you just ignore it. You just move on to the next thing. You do something else. That's the key. The key is doing less, not participating, looking, just looking. And even if you do that action again that you didn't want to do, don't think about it. Just look at it. Don't judge yourself. Just look at it. Don't fall into the guilt. Do it. Look at it. Just look. Just observe the action you're doing. Look at those thoughts come by. But don't fall into that. And when you start being judgmental about the actions you're doing, about yourself, you will see that you won't have a reason to do it again later, because you won't have that guilt and you won't have that anxiety and the depression. Those things will go away as those thoughts, and the self-judgment, hate, the pain will go away. Now that you created some space between you and the thought, you're able to actually look at it and just see it for what it is. And for the first time, not identify with it. And then you might actually see in it the origin of who, what, when those things actually came from. You might recognize, I've heard that before. I know that voice. I know that criticism. I know that attitude. I know the place that it actually came from. And that's where it belongs, because it doesn't belong to you. and you actually can find out who it is that is occupying your mind and causing your anxiety, your depression, your frustration, your anger. All those things come from that place. So that moment will also open the door to the solution to the problem by seeing and knowing who it is that's occupying your mind, who it is you need to resolve issues with, who it is you need to basically take out from your thought pattern. Because that person most likely upsets you, and by that control you and occupy your mind. So once you learn how to deal with that, and we'll talk about that later, you'll be able to move on and be free to completely have your own ideas come up, your own freedom of movement, your own personality take over in the present without those voices interrupting you in every move. It is really hard to go about life with another being inside of your head, constantly judging you, criticizing you, constantly telling you what you're doing wrong, what you should have done, what you shouldn't do. It's just like endless commentary about everything that you do. And no wonder, that so many people just need relief. We just need a moment of quietness, a moment away from that. And hopefully this practice will help you achieve that permanently. But we need to be very compassionate to all the people that are constantly running away from themselves, going unconscious and trying to just have that relief. When somebody is judgmental or hateful, I feel for them because I know that they live in hell. Whatever they project on me, it's tenfold in their mind for themselves. They torture themselves more than they'll ever do to me. Their hate and their self-judgment and the space they're in is a place I don't want to be in, but they definitely want to take them out of there. So we have to acknowledge that and see that the people we deal with and the situation around us, that's usually what's happening. That's usually the source of all the friction and problems, is when two people that have that toxic thought pattern meet. There's just no way that it will end well. So when having that voice in your head all the time, it's really like somebody that is sitting next to you and talking to you the whole time. When somebody is talking constantly, it is a way to control you, by the way, if you don't know, but when somebody is constantly talking to you, you can't be present. There's no space for yourself to be present, to have your own ideas in that moment, and it just occupies the whole space. Now take that person, put it in your head. That's even worse. So that's why we want to identify and separate and then take out those voices from our head, because they're controlling us, they're occupying us, and they don't give us the freedom we need to do the right thing at the right time. In the next video, I will guide you through the actual meditation, and we'll do it together. And the meditation is being an observer, when we'll look at our thoughts like clouds passing by in a night sky. We'll have our eyes closed and you're like in a night sky, a cloudy night, and we'll have those thoughts come in and go out. We won't interact with them, we won't participate until that night sky is clear, and then we'll just see the stars. And the light of the stars is the opposite of the thoughts, and it will feed us back. So we'll do that together, and then I'll do a few more meditations that will have to do with our main theme of water. So it'll be ocean meditation, river, groundwater, rain meditation. And to me it sounds very exciting. I really can't wait to make all of these. But the cloud meditation is the main one. It's really the idea of clearing out the space in your head, that cloudiness, that fogginess, having a clear mind. And in that space, once you create that space, then everything will start flowing up and rising. You will suddenly see what it is that you actually need to do. What's the subject that's urgent? What the things that you have ignored, that you overlooked. That's the opposite of observing, is overlooking. So there's things that you actually are ignoring. You have blind spots, you're overlooking them, that needs to be done. By not doing them, that's the source of the anxiety. From there comes frustration, anger. And once you clear that space, you might have never had that feeling before. Because a lot of times, instead of clearing the space, we just occupy it with something else. Like I said, music, drugs, food, whatever it is. But suddenly when you clear that space and you come up, your true being, you will see that it's so easy to go about life. It's so joyful, peaceful. You don't have anymore that up and down, the swing that just takes you up to bring you down. You will just have this beautiful, peaceful, joyful way of being in the present, seeing things as they are, not creating expectations of the future, bad or good, not having disappointments, not burdening other people with that. And the world around you will change immediately, in a day. People know when you walk in with those thoughts in mind. People know when you come in with that judgmental eye, with that hateful attitude. And they also know when you don't. And when you don't, they will welcome you with open arms. It's amazing how in the same world, the same reality, the same workplace, family, everywhere you are, everything is going to change once you let that go. Somehow life just knows. Life around you just immediately reacts. Everything you need to know is already inside of you, and all we're doing is creating space. Clearing up the space so that can come out. Nobody is going to tell you what to do. All I'm trying to do is clear the space so you will know what to do on your own, for yourself, by yourself. And that's the beautiful part about this. There's no attachment, there's no more anyone occupying your mind, there's no more anyone telling you what to do, what not to do, right, wrong, good, bad, none of that. It will be you alone, and you'll be able to discern. You'll be able to see for yourself and do it on your own. The goal for the video today was to give you an introduction to the practice, to see how it's different from other practices that we have, and to also understand why we need it, what is the goal, and hopefully we can achieve that goal together. So thank you very much for watching today. See you soon.